speaker today is Barta. I asked him how long he'd been a member, and he said over 20 years, so he's contributing and giving back his knowledge. And this is, get my notes here, kind of a continuation of a prior presentation that he made back in July of 2014, entitled "So You Want to Build a Workshop." In that presentation, he covered a wide range of workshop sizes, concerns, and components. In this presentation, Van will concentrate more on building a workshop within the confines of a small area, such as a single-car garage. A little on his bio, he says he's an avocational woodworker. I think I've got that right. For years, he's used woodworking as an escape from life's daily grind. He began his woodworking by taking a cabinet making class at TVI, now C&M. He was spoiled by the woodworking shop at TVI, so he also began trying to acquire all the tools he could fit into his own shop. Says I have had a shop in a spare room in the house, one bay in a 3-car garage, and now in a basement. I'm not an expert, but I have experience that I want to share with the group on what works for me. We can all learn from sharing our successes and failures with others. So with that, let me go over the description here. The presentation will cover a number of aspects that need to be considered when building a shop. Such things as what type of woodworking will be done in the shop, the space available, and the type of machinery and tools necessary to begin woodworking along with others that make tasks easier. 3 shops will be featured that will illustrate how woodworking changes as shop space and organization is increased. Hopefully these examples will illustrate the main theme of the presentation, that shop setup is a journey, not an event. With that, can we work and welcome our good longtime member Van Barta and take advantage of his knowledge and experience.
Well, I'd like to start by saying I don't know who's in charge of scheduling these talks, but following Charlie Palmer in a talk, I kind of feel like Topo Gigio following the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. You know, I mean, how do you top that? This is a little bit of a rehash and some new things on a talk that I thought I'd done a couple of years ago. Turns out it was 5 years ago. At that time, I did a talk on, I kind of went around and visited what I call the shop mahals in this group. And there's some incredible shops out there. And I went around, visited a number of them, got a presentation together. We had 5 shops to cover. I think we got through 2 of them in one day, and I came back and did the other 3 in the follow-up. It was an enjoyable. I enjoyed getting the presentation together. It was a lot of fun visiting those shops and hearing. And I think the theme that you get on all of this is exactly this. And this was a little piece of the first presentation, that building a shop is a journey, not an event. We can't go out there. I guess short of winning the lottery and suddenly deciding to become a woodworker, you're probably not going to go out and set up the perfect shop day one. You just can't do it. And there's a lot of different things that we're going to consider in here that make that impossible. So with that, oh, there we go. Something's working. Okay, I'm good. If you want to, that's fine. That's fine. So, as I said, I presented a variation of this program about 5 years ago. I'm no expert, and I do what's worked for me, and I've kind of figured out what's worked for me over the years. And also I've spent time kind of looking at other people and figuring out what works for them. As they said in the bio, I've had a shop or work area since I first bought my house in 45 years ago. My current shop is, I think it's the best I've had, but it still has limitations and a ways to go, okay? don't know why it's doing this, but this is interesting. Whoa, there we go. Now, there's always going to be compromises setting up a shop. You got to kind of first figure out what are you going to use this thing for? What kind of woodworking are you going to be doing? And that's sometimes a little difficult when you're a beginning woodworker. You know, you don't know exactly what you're going to do. So you get in there and you talk to people, and most people will say, well, you do it this way. And you start your shop, and then you gradually figure out, well, maybe I want to do this, this, and this, and it's going to affect the way you're going to set up your shop. You have to look at the number of users that are going to be using the shop, and I'm not talking just for the shop itself. I'm talking about, are there people that need to get in the garage and park their car while your shop equipment is there? That's what I mean there more.
They might want to.
They might want to. Well, in the case of my wife, she will. You know, I might not want her to, but she will. You have to look at the available space that you have. Is it a garage? Is it a basement? Is it outside? Is it inside? Whatever. And you have to look at your budget. And believe me, budget is a big consideration for all of us. No one size fits all your needs, and you need to make your shop your own. And I put this last one on there that you can get spoiled very quickly. Again, as a beginning woodworker, I started at C&M, and TBI then, C&M now. And I got spoiled. I had a table saw that I had been given. My wife gave me a table saw, and I didn't know how to use it, so I thought, well, I'll go down to C&M. Well, you get down there, and they've got every tool in the book and more. And so you get spoiled very quickly. Now you come home to your home shop, and you think, wow, I need to get this, and I need to get that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I'll tell you right now that you can get spoiled by going to a really nice shop right out of the get-go. Go ahead. There we go. 4 options that I know of, and there's probably more that I haven't thought of, but you know, you can set up in a garage. We'll go through each of these in detail. A basement, that's where I am right now, and believe me, it's good and it's bad. A room in the house, which again, I think that has a lot of limitations, but if you're doing specific types of woodwork, yes, it'll work, and it may be the only place you have. So again, consider that. Or a separate building, which I think is probably, it's the best of all if you can do it. Go ahead.
10 by 12.
Yeah, we have a 10 by 12 spare building here that you can get $200. Let's start here with a garage. That's where most of us, I would think, probably start woodworking. You know, you get a spot in the garage, and you get a tool or two, and okay, I've got my shop. It is very readily available. Almost every house has a garage. You can just about bet the ranch on that. You have to consider, is it a detached garage or a standalone? If it's attached, you got to consider then now, how am I going to impact the house by having my shop in the garage? It competes with the car, and as I told you, my wife has always had one rule. You can do whatever you want in the garage as long as I can park my car in there at night. So she's a very understanding woman, and she lets me do what I want to do out there, and I will honor that request every day. Most garages, you need to have the ability to move your tools around, because again, you're competing with other uses. So at the end of the day, you have to fairly easily be able to move your tools to the side and let the other people use the garage. Usually it's an easy access in and out. You've got a double garage door, easy to get goods in, sheet goods, whatever, doesn't matter. It's easy to get stuff in and out. Go ahead. Smooth level floor, last thing. Smooth level floor, obviously. Now, when I first set up my shop in my basement, it was not a full basement at that point. My wife and I actually dug out the basement over a summer by hand and dropped the floor and leveled it, because at the time when I first moved in there was some concrete that had been poured in there, but it followed the terrain of the land, and I literally had a 2x4 standing on its side so that I could level my table saw. That's how far out of level it was. And so, again, a garage floor, you start out with a nice level floor, and it's easy to move equipment around if it's on rollers, okay? Electrical service, almost every garage I've seen, some of the newer ones they're doing better with, but almost every garage that you look at, there's how many plugs? 2. The ceiling for the garage door opener, and 1 on the wall someplace. Okay, that's usually it. So that can be a problem. It's not anything that you can't correct because usually the panel's in there, and you can usually put some extra plugs in. Noise, again, it can be a problem especially if the garage is attached. If you're out there sawing at 10 o'clock at night, it may be a problem. Go ahead. Now, basement. Here's the bigger thing on a basement. Access is a huge problem. And when I first started, I had 2 doors. Both of them had a curb over them that was about 12 inches. And they were 32-inch doors. I actually moved what at the time, it's the Beast, which is, if you guys know, a Roebland X31, weighs 1,140 pounds. You can strip it down to about 800 pounds by taking it's a multi-purpose machine. It does table saw, jointer, planer, mortising machine, and a shaper. There we go, five different operations. European-made machine, great machine. If you're starting out, sometimes a combination machine is a great way to start because you get a lot in a small space, you get a lot of woodworking in one place. But I moved that machine down around my house, 4 of us did, picking it up, 800 pounds, with straps. We horsed it around down a hill and to the basement area. Then we had to get it into the shop. And the shop, as I say, had about a 32-inch door. The machine is 30 inches. So try horsing 800 pounds over a 12-inch step into a 2-inch bigger door. It's hard. And then, as I say, I had to put a 2x4 down until I could get the floor dug out properly and get it ready to go. So access both in and out is a problem. Don't try and build a boat as, CSI? Or no, NCIS. He's been building that boat, and one of these days he's going to have to take it out of that basement, and that's going to be fun to watch. Anyway, most of my stuff now, if I have sheet goods, because of the ceiling height, I break down the sheet goods before I bring them into the shop. I have an upstairs where the garage is, and I actually have a table and that I can lay out, cut down my sheet goods, then I bring them into the shop and start working them. The access is just not there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Did you consider finishing your basement before you moved into your shop?
It would be great if I could. The problem that I had is that we were getting in, I had to do a bunch of other work to the house, and so time-wise it was, I didn't want to have to store the stuff off-site someplace, so I moved it all in and did the best I could for the short term. The next summer, I dug out the basement, and actually we did that in 2 steps, half the basement. So I moved all the tools over to the one half. They came in, poured a floor. We waited, it cured up. We moved the tools back over to that side, dug out the rest of it, and then got in there and actually got the floor set. Oh yeah. Okay. My basement has no outside light whatsoever. There's no windows. Now that's good because it stays cool in the summer and warm in the winter. It's probably low to mid 60s in there all year round. So it's even the finished part of the basement where there are some windows, which is attached to the shop by a closed door, but that part of it gets cold and needs heat. My basement, I've never had heat or air conditioning in there, and it's, like I say, it's very pleasant to work in. Air, big consideration. I mean, you probably do not want to be painting or doing anything like that in there. You need filtration. I've got dust collection and I've got dust filtration both. And that's a very important thing. And noise is a problem. Again, when you're working at 9 o'clock at night and everybody else is trying to go to sleep, it's that noise can come up through the floor pretty quickly. So, go ahead. Yes, sir.
So in relationship to this room we're in now, how is your basement like half this size of the room?
Okay, in relation to this room, so the question was how big is it in relation to the room? My shop is about 900 square feet. And it's an L shape. And you know, the only, like I say, the disadvantage that I have is the ceiling height is 7 foot. And then there's some beams in there that are actually closer to 6'2". So getting a full sheet of plywood in there is darn near impossible. But you can do it, I've done it. I now have, since I've redone the shop, I have double doors going out to the backyard. And so bringing things in and out, and I don't have the curb anymore. That was cut down. So it's better. It's a lot better than it was, but it's still bringing full sheets of plywood in is just, I've done it. I break them down upstairs. It's too much easier to do it that way. And I have grandsons that can carry the wood down then. So that works out good. Size-wise, I don't know what this is, but my shop is great. I don't need any more room than what I have. I would like more ceiling height. And shame on me, I didn't think it through enough. I should have dropped the floor another foot. And I didn't consciously because I didn't want water coming in from the outside, but that really wasn't ever a consideration. I shouldn't have worried about that part of it. I should have worried more about the fact that I didn't have the height. So, I had one house where I had a shop and I tried it in another room in the house. Wasn't big enough, and it was really, I didn't enjoy woodworking in there at all. And so, you know, again, depending on the type of woodworking you do, I think this can work if you're doing small projects, hand tools. You know, there's a lot of people that can make a small space work, and that's probably what you're looking at in here. Access, usually a problem in here. You're going through an interior door to get there, so 30 to 32 inches wide, there's a problem. As I said, probably more for hobby work. Noise obviously is an issue if you're using any kind of power tools. Dust is a problem. Dirt and the chips and everything. I can remember I'd make a dusty mess on the bottom and I'd track it into the house, and then I was in trouble. Organization in a small shop, you've got to do it. It's just, you cannot live with a messy small shop. It's impossible to work. Go ahead. I think this is probably what we all would love to have, and I think this is the ultimate, as far as I'm concerned, is a separate building, and it's its own space. You can set it up the way you want to. You can tailor it to the kinds of woodworking that you're doing. You can organize it. You can design it to fit your needs, and I think the most important thing is there that it can be left the way it is. You finish for the day, walk in, come back out the next day, you're ready to work. There's no setup or things that you have to do with it. Noise, generally not a problem, and the only downside that I know of on this is probably it's the most expensive option. I just built a second garage there at my house, which is now going to be doing mostly, I probably will do some of the main, it's close to my shop, and it's down a hill, so I can back down there and unload sheet goods, so I can probably cut my sheet goods down there now, take them into my shop and work them. I've kind of gotten interested in doing some metal work too, so my welding and that type of stuff is going to be in the garage too. And I have a 48 Chevy pickup that I'm getting ready to restore, so that's going to be in there. So that's going to kind of be the metalworking area, but I can use it to break down sheet goods. You know, it's probably just building the shell of the building was 20-some thousand. You know, you start looking at that, and now I've spent some money doing electrical work to it just a few weeks ago. It's getting set up, but it's not a cheap option to do. It does add value, I think, to your house. I mean, I've got a separate, now I've got a four-car garage versus a two-car garage. So it adds something, but you're probably never going to get your money back out of it.
What's the square footage of the add-on?
The add-on is a little over width, so I'm going to say it's probably 22 by about 30. So it's a two-car, but it's extra length. That's kind of where I would go with it. Okay, next one. So let's think this through a little bit. What kind of work will you be doing in a shop? If you're a wood turner, I would suggest that you would set it up one way. If you're a flat boarder only, you might set it up another way. If you're into hand tools, then I would think you would organize it and have your hand tools hanging on the walls. Get them out where you can use them. You need to figure out what you're going to be doing, how much of that you're going to be doing, and then figure out, are you going to be able to use this just for woodworking, or are you going to have to kind of have other uses that are going to compete with this? And I would submit that finishing that's a whole nother ball game when you get to it. What you're going to need to be set up there. As much as possible, you may want to be able to finish outside. It opens up a whole new can of worms when you decide to start finishing, particularly if that shop is attached in any way, shape, or form to your house. You will definitely get feedback when you open the can of whatever finish and start working with it. Go ahead. Now, this is where I think it gets a little bit interesting, and this is where you personalize your shop, if you will. I think there's a lot of differing. If you ask 10 different woodworkers, you'd probably get 11 different opinions on what their most important tools are. It's that way. Certainly, there are certain tools that everybody's going to say, yeah, I want one of those. But there's other tools that some people would say, oh yeah, I wouldn't live without it, and other people would say, I don't need it. So I think that's what you're really looking at. If you're looking at power or hand tools, and believe me, there's a lot of people that do a lot of incredible woodwork with just hand tools. I think of Herschel Weiss, tremendous woodworker, studied at the College of the Redwoods, does incredible commission pieces. Herschel does a lot of he has an interesting shop. If you ever get a chance, go down and visit it. It's in the back of, and I can't remember the name of the church, but it's down off from Rio Grande. It's a synagogue, yes, it's not, yes. And he's in a room in the back, probably no bigger than this, a little smaller, I would say. And he's got little rugs on the floor. The setup is just incredible. Does not have a table saw. He has a little, and I can't remember, Derek, you always remember the name of the saw that he has. It's a printer's saw. And they used it to slice up the lead. When they set type and everything, they would slice the lead off on the sides of it. So the saw blade is about maybe 4 inches. And it's got a sliding table. You used to be able to get them for maybe $500 or $600 and rebuild them, and they're a great cutoff saw. I mean, to cut on a sliding table, it's a wonderful little saw, but it's pretty specialized. So he has one of those. He probably has the mother of all band saws. It's huge. It's got to be at least a 20-inch band saw, and that's what he uses. He really doesn't have a lot of other power tools. Most of his work is done by hand. Tremendous woodwork. Size matters. What I mean to say there is that you've got to take into consideration the size of your shop, the size of the things that you're going to be working on, and then the size of the equipment. And by the equipment, I also, it isn't just the size of the footprint of the equipment, it's when you're using the equipment. If you're running a 4x8 sheet through a table saw, I would submit that you need probably 8 feet on one side of it, almost 8 feet on the other side of it, the length of the table saw, and 4 feet. So somewhere in that range. It's like when you put a pool table into a room. Everybody says, oh, well, yeah, it's only 4 foot by 8 foot. Well, yeah, but you got the pool cues on the side and everything else. So you start putting all that together, and you probably need a 16 by 16 foot room to fit a pool table. Same argument. Most important tools, and this is where I kind of alluded to this, I think most of us would say a table saw is real important. But again, Herschel doesn't really have a table saw. I know we were making planes down there one time in a class that I took with him, and I needed maybe 18 inches of a board cut off. He went and grabbed a hand saw, sawed off the board. I don't need a table saw, okay? Workbench, gotta have it. It's probably, we all think of that as maybe the second or third tool. I think it ought to be the first. That's, if you've got a good place to work, you're going to enjoy woodworking. And it's got to be stable. It's got to have enough room around it I would submit that you need to be able to move around the whole workbench. That's the best way to set it up if you can. So again, I think that's something. Drill press, joiner, planer, routers, maybe router table. I didn't use a router table for the first probably 10 years I did woodworking. Once you get a router table, you almost don't use a hand router anymore. I think the control that you have on it and everything is well worth it. That's getting it. Lathe, again, I've got one. I don't use it probably as much as I'd like to, but not only can you do individual projects on it, but a lot of the things that you do for flatboarding depend on things that need to be done on a lathe. So I think that's probably something. Sanders, yeah, I have probably every sander that is, and I still hate to sand. Combination machine, I alluded to the one that I had. I had a very good friend of mine, passed away several years ago, did incredible woodworking on a shopsmith. Never had anything more than a shopsmith, did incredible woodworking. Those are the kinds of machines that we think of them as, well, they're small space machines, but if you learn how to use the machine, it can do incredible work. They're not as convenient as having the individual machines, but they certainly don't take up the room that you have.
Is there a lot of tear down and setup when you have one of these combination machines?
So the question was, is there a lot of tear down setup? Depends on the machine. A shopsmith, I think there's a little more of that because a number of combination machines use one motor. And so you're having to bring the head, the woodworking head, to the motor. And either, like a shopsmith, it can turn the saw blade, but then you can, to put something like a bandsaw on it, you have to bring the bandsaw piece over and hook it. There's a plastic yoke, basically, that you hook between the two parts of it. So it does take some setup time. The Roebland that I have, and I actually still have it, it has 3 motors to it, three 3 horsepower motors. And that's why, it weighs a ton. But that one, you can actually use the saw, is one motor. You can just drop the saw blade, move over to the planer. And the planer is a planer is a joiner on the top and a planer on the bottom, 12-inch wide, both, and the ways on the joiner are probably 4 foot each, I would say. And so setup on that is a little easier because you've got 3 separate motors. The mortiser and the shaper run off the third motor. So you've got the 3. So there's not as much setup there, but it still is, there's a setup. And now that I have the space, I've gone back to the individual machines. I have a separate table saw, separate joiner, separate planer. If you've got the room, it's clearly easier if you do that. So, yes, John.
A couple very common tools you haven't listed there. One is the bandsaw that you mentioned. And
I didn't put it there, did I?
other is grinders.
Yeah.
Everybody really uses,
Yep.
if you don't do turning, which must have a grinder.
Yeah.
But a lot of sharpening of other lot more.
Right. That's a good point. So his point was couple of other things. He listed a grinder. Absolutely, got to have it. You know, and you use it not just for the woodworking. It's for a lot of different things. Clean up a lot of, you know, a grinder's a must. And the other one was a bandsaw, and I don't know why I didn't put it on here. That's yeah, absolutely. A bandsaw. Can you do it with a jigsaw? Yeah, but again, a bandsaw, you've just taken it to that next level. And there's a lot of people, if you're uncomfortable with a table saw, you can do everything on a bandsaw. You know, literally. If you set up a bandsaw and have enough room around it and everything, you can work with a bandsaw. So if you're uncomfortable with a spinning blade, you know, sticking up from a table, try a bandsaw. Although Jerry, Jerry Wall and Jim Templeton, both the 2 cuts that we've had, the accidents at toy parties have been on a bandsaw. So I don't know. Yeah, go figure.
Templeton was very embarrassed.
Templeton was embarrassed because he cut his thumb on a bandsaw, took it down and had it stitched up, and 1 month later cut the same finger in the same place on the same machine and had to go back down and get it stitched up again. And the young doctor came in and said, you know, Mr. Templeton, you look like you did this before. And Mr. Templeton was not amused. He allowed us how the doctor may be assaulted if he kept up with the line of questioning he had. But anyway, utilities, there we go, water, sewer. Obviously electrical, and I'll get into a little more on the electrical later. I've kind of gone through this in spades here in the last month or so, so I kind of know a little more about that than I want to know at this point. Lighting, very important, and 2 types of lighting you want. Overhead lighting, your general lighting, and then you need good task lighting. And believe me, the older I get, the more task lighting becomes very important. And so I had somebody tell me one time that if your lighting's good, you don't notice it. If it's bad, you definitely will notice it. So I would submit that you do the best you can with lighting, both task and ambient lighting. And the other thing I think that we don't do enough of in the ambient lighting is keep everything dust-free. Because it's hard, but again, you get a coating of dust along lighting and all of a sudden you've cut down the efficiency of the lighting. So the more you can keep it clean, the better off you will be. Air. Interesting here, and we'll cover a little more of the specifics of air, but I would submit that every machine that you have ought to have some way of getting an air chuck to it. And so run more air than what you think you're going to need. It's easy to run, especially when you're first setting up a shop, and it's you're going to use it. And there's a lot, we'll go through some of the specifics there. Dust collection, we'll go through, again, we'll do specifics on this, but you need 2 types of it. You need the dust collection that picks up the big stuff and everything, and you need dust purification to keep yourself healthy. That's the stuff that'll hurt you over time, is the small stuff. The stuff you can't see, that's the stuff that's going to be bad for you. Heating and cooling, again, most of us, depending on where you are, if you're inside, you don't need to worry too much about it. A garage can be a darn cold place to work in. My basement shop, as I say, I can work there in short sleeves year round, basically, and enjoy it. Heating and cooling cooling may be more important than heating, because you can work when you're a little cool, and if you're working and when working on projects, you don't notice it. But if it's hot out there, definitely it saps you. And the last few days have demonstrated that, I'm sure, to everybody. Water, sewer, we're gonna cover that a little bit more later. The sewer may be not so important, but the water, if you can get a wash basin or something there in your shop, it's a good thing to have. It's just easier to work with. The 3 shops that we're gonna demonstrate, all 3 have them, which is kind of neat. You gotta kind of look at, what do I need in the shop? And this becomes a very loaded question. If we're gonna look at a shop, Tracy Murray's shop out in Corrales. Tracy has bought a lot of older machines, large industrial sized machines. And we'll show you more of that. The downside of those is some of those need 3-phase power. And you need a lot of power. They take a chunk of it at one time. So again, you've got to look at, how many machines do I think I'm going to be running here? How many people are going to be using this at one time? If it's one person walking around, you don't need a ton of power. But if you have a toy party there, you're probably going to be popping circuits all day long, because you got more tools running than you got power. And we've run into that at Jim Templeton's shop. We've run into it at my shop. Tracy's, I think, is well set up. I don't think he has any problems with it. But it's a consideration, and you end up, with a long extension cord run from someplace else in the house, so you can run a machine, so you can run multiple machines at one time. That's I think, a big consideration. The special power needs, again, if you have 3-phase, you're going to have to. And there's a workaround, but it's not a cheap workaround. Where can you steal power? Now, don't go to your neighbors. Tom Coor, older member, he used to go over when they had a toy party and plug into his next door neighbors and run power over there from there. Next door neighbor is also a member. Anyway, do you need to run new service? And if you're talking about a large amount, you may need to. You can also, I had to, my house, when I originally bought it, had 125 amp service. That's not enough. Most houses now are not built with that. 200 is probably the minimum right now that's run to a house if you're building a new house. And I've seen them up to 400 amp service. So a newer house, you're not going to have some of the problems. An older house, you will. So you may need to increase your service. I increased mine. Had a new panel put in. Then I ran a sub panel down, or ran a service down to my shop. And actually, when I first did it, I ran it on the outside. We ran it in conduit, ran it around and popped it in the shop, and I had a little sub panel down there, which I think was 60 amps. And worked fine. But just recently, now that since I've added the garage, I now need power out there. And so I built, I had them run 100 amp service now to my shop, or actually it splits. So 100 amps to my shop, and I run it, so that's one sub panel. And then I run another sub panel out to the garage, and that has, I believe it is 60 amps on it. So now I've got kind of my power set, and I'm comfortable that whatever I'm going to do, I've got the power to do it. But it's not a cheap, it's probably a $3,000 solution to get that fixed. So as I say, how many people are using the shop does affect it. If it's one or two, it's not not the biggest consideration. This is kind of we've covered a little bit of this. Age of the machinery, the three-phase. You can buy three-phase machinery. The machine is cheap. You can buy some of those big machines for $500. But now you got to move it, you got to set it, and you got to get power to it, and that's where the expense comes in. I wish Tracy was here. He would have a better handle on what it costs to get the three-phase. He did not run, you can't get three-phase, at least to my knowledge, you can't just go and get three-phase power. You end up having to run an inverter, and that actually is like a separate motor. So you're running the 220, runs the motor, and the motor actually is a generator that creates the third leg. And so that's how you end up with the three-phase. That is not a cheap setup. It's multiple thousands of dollars to do that. Yes, sir.
Can't you just have the VSDs? VSDs, variable, VSD for something drive, because that's what people normally do now for three-phase, when they just take 220 and convert it to three-phase.
Well, and that's what Tracy did, but it's not a cheap setup to do that. It's a and we'll go through it. I'll show you when we get to Tracy's shop, but it's basically setting up to where it is. That's essentially what it's doing, is creating that third leg.
Do it on a machine by machine basis too, or you can use one for all machines.
Well, and if you're getting multiple machines, it's probably cheaper to do it one time and do it, then you're plugging into that versus doing it machine by machine. So it's just something to think about. You see these tool ads and you know, you look at them and you think, wow, you know, gosh, I can get an 18-inch joiner for $500. Ooh, that's a good deal. But I can guarantee when you start moving that thing and hooking it up, they're wonderful machines, don't get me wrong. I mean, that's an industrial machine. It's designed to run all day, every day, and it won't even hiccup. But there's a downside to them.
Be aware of three-phase.
Be aware of three-phase, yes, absolutely. The 110 volt machines, again, you've got to watch those because they take a lot of amperage, a lot of them. I mean, if you get a planer, 110 volt planer, watch the amperage on those things because they're going to take a pretty healthy, at least a 20 amp circuit on its own. So, on the wall, under flooring, I wish, again, looking back on it, I wish I'd have run a couple of plugs in my floor, but I didn't. But again, the more that you can think that kind of the master plan of your shop out from the get-go, you may avoid some of this by being able to run some of that in the floor. I think, John, you've run a lot of it. John's run, it was interesting, and I'll talk a little bit about it. Well, talk about it now. Take a little side trip here. John had a number of machines and had run power to them, but one of the things he had at every machine was a mat to stand on. And so he decided, you know, he was getting ready to do some work, went over, tripped on the mat in front of his table saw, and went down on the table saw. Spinning. And missed the saw blade, fortunately, because he's still here, obviously. And all digits. But he went in the next day and took out all of the mats and went in and put a floor in that actually it's a 2x4.
It's a panel flooring that you can get at Costco. But I put it on top of wafer board, and I ran some Romex in that to dedicated outlets in the floor. It really worked well.
So what he's saying is he had wafer board and then an engineered wood on top of that, but the wafer board has allowed him to run Romex, and so retrofitting kind of that you can go back and put the plugs where you need to go. And consider that, because again, you know, you think about the old computer rooms where they had false floors, and you can run all of your electrical and everything and down in the floor. It's a great way. If you decide to move a machine around, it's not the end of the world. You move the electrical with it. Yes, sir.
Are ceiling drops an option, or is that outside of code?
It's you can do. I've got a couple of, I don't know whether it's, maybe I shouldn't say it. Any electrical inspectors in here? I have plugs in the ceiling and run some drops out of there. The only thing I would say with that is there's certain areas, like I have one over my workbench, which is really nice to be able to plug in sanders and things like that and use them. The cord's going up here and I'm just using the cord down here. I also have one on a table saw, and I've actually run it down a steel support column and back into the saw, because you don't want something like that when you're trying to run something through a table saw or a router or a table router or whatever. Yeah,
It's my understanding, code-wise, that you have issues when you put floor plugs in. And the code issues, my understanding, has to do with the gas accumulation that might happen. The fumes all settle to the floor, and you have a spark source down there, and then code inspectors won't allow you to have that. So unless you can prove to their satisfaction that you're not going to have that environment there, you might have issues.
right. And that's a very good point. So his point is that if you put a floor, like in a garage, as an example, I don't believe it's code to have a floor plug. And the thinking is that if you've got fumes or anything, they would accumulate low, and so everything needs to be up, I think it's 18 inches is the magic number, or higher. Well, okay, in a shop, that's, you know, it's not as big a consideration. Inside a house, you can put a floor plug in. So you can probably get around that, but you're right, an electrical inspector in a garage may frown on you putting a floor plug in. Yes, John?
You're right, it's not legal to put a floor plug in a garage area, but ceiling plugs are legal. And in fact, most garages, if you have a garage door opener, you
Have it.
do a ceiling plug.
Yeah.
And what I've done in my shop is buy each, in both the garage and my shop, which was a single garage, essentially attached. But I've installed cord reels that plug into the other circuit, the other half of that garage door opener circuit, and then you can easily pull down and power other things.
Yep.
And it's so easy to just temporarily pull that down and plug in a machine
Yeah.
you're not using constantly, and it's perfectly legal.
Yeah, cord reels are great. I mean, they answer a lot of problems that you have. You don't want a bunch of cords running around, but if you can pull one down, use it, put it back up, it's a great thing. Either on the wall or on the ceiling, either one. So, next one, we're trying to blast through these as quick as possible so that we can, because I want to take you on the tour of the shops. So, let's kind of run through these real quickly. We've talked a little bit about task lighting versus general lighting. If you can incorporate natural light, great, you should. We're going to see Ben Blackwell's shop, great use of natural lighting in that. Incandescent lighting is going away. I would encourage everyone to do away with it as much as possible. It's fluorescent lighting is, again, it's a way of the past. You go out there in a cold shop and turn on fluorescent lights, it's going to take them 30 minutes to stop, if they stop flickering. It's just not as good. It doesn't work well in the low temperatures. The colors are not usually real good with the fluorescent lighting. You can get color adjusted, but it's not as good as having true lighting in there. The ballasts and everything, most of the fluorescents, a lot of the fluorescents now don't need ballast, but it's a consideration when you've got to start replacing those. Go ahead.
What would you suggest for incandescent then? Is that what you're saying?
Get rid of it. Yeah, at this point, let's go to the next slide, and I'll that'll tell you a little bit about what we want to do. LED, the technology is here now. It's don't look at the other stuff, look at LED. It's lower cost. It's a little more to start with, but it's lower cost to operate. It can be used for either general lighting, task lighting, anything you need it to do, it's there. Like I say, it's a little more expensive now to start, although the cost, it's amazing to me, that cost is half of what it was 5 years ago. Literally half. And so that's, yeah.
And you know you can take a regular 4-foot fixture, take the ballast out,
Yep.
rewire it for 110 volt LED.
Yes, you can replace them. And interesting there, because I got into a deal, I had this was an under cabinet type light that was at an office, and I thought, well, I'll just rewire it. Well, I bought a LED replacement bulb, if you will, and put that in there, and it wouldn't work. I'm going, what in the heck is wrong with this thing? So I checked my wiring and did all that. Come to find out, there are certain of those bulbs that are not designed to work without a ballast. They're designed that if you plug them in, they work with a ballast. So again, be careful with that. It should be able to work, but on that particular case, it didn't.
Or
John?
go to Costco and buy a brand new one for $20.
Yes, that's where I was going. I bought 4 of them for the garage, and I think they were $20, right at $19.99 a piece. And that's the bulbs, the fixture, everything.
I just bought 10 fixtures for $200.
There you go. So $20 a piece. I'm telling you, you will not regret LED lighting at all. Let me go back, David.
Years ago, through electronic parts catalogs, you could buy LED strips. And so I bought probably 8 of those strips, and I wired them up with a full wave bridge rectifier, and then got a wallboard transformer. And so I have that shop right above where I do electronic work and some reloading and stuff. And you have to make sure you have a full wave bridge because it will flicker if you just put in a couple diodes. You move your head, it'll strobe on you. But it was like a Rev 1, and it's pretty bright, and it only pulls 193 milliamps.
Yeah.
And it's got 4 strips that are probably, whatever length that is, almost over 2 feet per strip.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Just a caveat on the LED, if you let them get dirty on top of it, or dust accumulate or bugs accumulate, the overheat and burn out as quickly as a regular light bulb. So you don't get this extended life at all.
One question, and then we're going to break.
Lumen sensitive. Lumens. Just
Yes.
Be aware of lumens.
Lumens are important. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk. All right, take a break. We've covered some of these, and what I really want to do is on the air is you need to think where you're going to need it before you button up all the access points to it. My shop still has open ceiling, and I'm still thinking about, well, maybe I could put another thing of air over there. And so I think it's important to kind of figure out where you need it and leave the shop where you can rerun it if you need to down the road. One other thing before we go further, I was informed at the break, in a garage, the code says you're supposed to have all of your plugs up 4 feet. That's the electrical code. And GFCI, yes, both. Okay? 4 feet. Yeah. So that is the code. What you run air in is important. PVC, I would discourage you from doing it. I ran it for several years. I came and heard a presentation actually here, and they talked about PVC, that if it's charged, you've got 100 pounds PSI running inside of it and you hit it, it can shatter. And so with my grandkids and everything around there, I thought, well, you know what? I don't need to do that. So I reran it in copper. So I would, if PVC's in the ground or in a wall where it's protected, it's fine, to run. It just, you need to be careful in how you approach that. Copper, it's expensive. It's getting more and more expensive. Copper's way up there right now. So, but it's a good way to run it. If you know how to sweat your own fittings, that's fairly cheap. If you go to shark bite fittings, which are the press-on type fittings, that's pretty expensive. You're going to be spending $8 to $10 for every fitting on that.
Those airtight?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely are. The neat thing about shark bites too is that you can run them on copper, PVC, PEX, whatever. You just push it in and it works. Yeah, John.
I used CPVC, which I think is more
A little more durable.
durable than
Yeah.
PVC. And
Yeah.
it's just as inexpensive.
It's pretty inexpensive. Yeah.
What was the statement?
John's used CPVC, and I don't know
I don't know what the C is.
polyvinyl chloride, but C is chlorinated polyvinyl chloride.
And it's sort of a light tan color or green color. And it varies the fittings and the lengths are just as inexpensive.
PVC. The note on copper. My wife wanted me to clean up one of the side yards and add some solar hot water loops and this and that. And I went, yeah, okay. Chopped it all up, took it in, and they gave me $189 for the copper I had. It was just in the way, laying on this concrete pad over here in the garage, or over there. I didn't know I had that kind of money just laying around.
Copper's. That's why they come in and pull the copper wire out of places because it's expensive. PEX. This stuff is neat stuff, and I've talked to a couple plumbers. They see no reason, and I've actually researched it a little bit. You can use air on PEX, and it's easy stuff to run. It's got flexibility. You can just kind of chunk it up there, and the fittings and everything are not hard to do. You do have to buy there's a tool that you buy one time, but the rest of it then the fittings are pretty good. So I think PEX is pretty neat stuff to use.
PEX A doesn't need the tool, PEX B does.
Yeah, but they weren't sure on that. The PEX A, they weren't sure on the air. It may not be rated quite high enough if you're running 150 psi or more. Then you want that little collar on there. Yeah. Okay. Steel, old school. It's a fitting nightmare. Don't do it. You'll thank me later for that. Conditioning, air is you need to be able to dry it and filter it both. And particularly, not so much if you're just using it to blow things off, but you need to have a fitting that you can go to if you're painting or anything like that with it to dry it and condition it both, and filter it. Need to look, if you're using pneumatic tools, they'll work, but if you don't have a large volume of air, they will not work correctly. Okay, so more in the sanders and things like that take a lot of air to run. And so you better have a pretty good size or either a storage system or a good size compressor that will put out a lot of air. It's the volume that the CFM, cubic feet per minute. That's what you need to look at. And you look at some of those big air sanders and they take a lot of CFM. So dust collection, again, it's one of the most important things you can think about in my mind. It's something that if you're going to be out there working in your shop, work safely. And that's one of the, other than hurting yourself on a piece of equipment, dust is probably, I think, the next thing that can hurt you. What kind of dust? If it's the big chips and things like that, that's one kind of dust collection. If you're trying to pick up the little bitty stuff, you need something that's going to filter that dust. So you need both. Yes, sir. Gail.
Yeah, your primary should be a cyclone. That'll pick up big stuff.
If you can get a cyclone, that's certainly a neat system to have, because that way you're probably 98% of the stuff, or vast majority of it, is going into the cyclone. You can empty that easily, and for a central system, a cyclone's the best way to go, no question about it. You need to decide whether you need a central system or not. I worried for I don't know how long about how do I hook up a central system and get it to all the tools. Again, I went down to Jim Templeton's shop, and he had one fairly small dust collector that he used on his table saw and on his planer, and the rest of his tools he hooked them up and put a small vacuum underneath them. So he wasn't trying to do a central dust collection system. He had kind of a hybrid where he worked. Most of his tools were done individually. Now he says the only disadvantage of that was when you had to empty 10 shop vacs at one time. So something to think about. I would submit that most machines need dust collection. But some of them need particular kind, like a planer doesn't create a lot of small dust particles. It creates more big, robust things. If you're running overhead or on the floor, I'm going to say I run one hookup of flexible hose that I can run to my table saw or to a planer or things, but it's hard. If you're running it on the floor, it's a trip hazard. So I would not encourage you, unless you can run it in the floor, I wouldn't encourage you to run it on the floor. It's tough to do. Who makes the most chips? It's probably your planer, but that's a planer and a joiner make a lot of big chips you better be prepared to handle. Noise, planers or dust collector creates a ton of noise. I have mine in a separate cabinet. It's still loud, and believe me, when I turn it on, everybody in the house knows it's on. So be prepared for that. If you can put the dust collector outside, great. It's a lot more enjoyable that way, believe me. Then the central air filter, again, a lot of units out there that can be up on the top, and that'll polish up the air and make it a lot easier on your lungs. Yes, sir.
So some of the bigger dust collectors, and I don't know what part of the requirement for, but have them at 40 degrees above or above. And so if you're going to put it outside, you probably need to put
it may need a separate cabinet or an insulated.
The other part of that is if you're heating your shop in the wintertime, you don't want to be exhausting that just out into the outside.
True, and one way to get around that is usually most of the larger dust collectors have a filter system and then your dust collector. And so what you can actually do is take the dust or the chips out, put them into the cyclone, bring another pipe back into the shop, and have your filters hanging there. And that way you're taking it out of your shop, but that warm air just goes, dumps the dust, and comes right back into your shop. Something to think about. Yes, sir.
I got to ask the audience here. Has anyone replaced their bag filter with one of those giant HEPA filters? Yeah. Is that a easy thing to do, or are they expensive, or what's the deal on?
I have an Omega system and it came with it. That's supplied with the
Well, mine's pretty old and it's in a closet. But every time I go to the woodworkers, I see those and I go, oh yeah, but I don't know if that's my size I have in my shop or
on mine. I had a jet single stage, and just take the top bag off, it just dropped right down on a good place. So three screws and
the places that make them make lots of different sizes. So
yeah,
you should be able to find one that
I'll
fits
have to
your
measure and then go in there and
or Nida Air Systems makes a kit that will suit
Yeah, they'll
Go online and
surely
read
fit
their-
your thing
their
if you've got any kind of
specifications.
standard one.
Okay.
It's pretty simple.
Another plug for Oneida, they will design the system for you. If you send them a map of your shop, it's pretty accurate. They will figure out all that stuff about what diameter duct work and all that business, which is pretty complicated.
Yeah, it's not, dust collection will drive you crazy quickly because nothing is standard. You know, I mean, the big systems, yeah, you know, and you can put them together easily. But I can guarantee you if you're trying to hook up a machine to a 4-inch fitting to your machine, you're going to tear your hair out at some point or another trying to do it.
Plus, if you run PVC on your vacuum and it's up in the ceiling, make sure you have a ground wire all the way through the thing, even a spiral or.
It's interesting on that because you read about it and they say, yeah, you have to have a ground wire, but nobody's ever been able to document that there's been a fire related to ungrounded PVC.
Static on mine where the sawdust.
The static, yeah, there is static if you're running it through there, no question.
Maybe I should run a wire.
Yeah, okay. Let's keep moving. Heating and cooling. Number one, how much heating and cooling do you need? Again, if you're in a garage, if it's insulated, everything like that, it's pretty nice to be able to condition that work area. Garages are, I mean, I'd walk out into my garage now and it's got to be 120 degrees in there. Nobody's going to enjoy working in that, I can guarantee it. Particularly if you're parking cars in there. Boy, you bring a car in there and let that heat up your garage, and you got better have some way to deal with that. Or working in there is not going to be fun. Insulate the workspace first. You know, otherwise you're going to be heating and cooling the outside. Portable or central, I mean, obviously there's a lot of little garage systems that you can pull in, even the swamp cooler type. My son-in-law is a mechanic and he works in his garage. He's got a little system that you fill it up with water and it works great for keeping a garage cool. And it seems to, but obviously if you can get a central system in there or one of those mini splits often works really well for a garage. And they're a lot cheaper than they were when they started out. They were stupid expensive for a while. Mini splits. Mini split is a, what's that? It's like a motel, yeah. It's the small unit that hangs on the wall usually. And there's a compressor that can service multiple rooms. So it's not like a central system because each of those little mini splits is its own little unit. And so if I want one room to be at 75 and the next room to be at 72, I can set it that way. The compressor works for all of the systems, but they're neat because you don't run any duct work. The system is, you run a hose basically to it, but that's it. 2 hoses, I think is what it is. But they're great systems, and they will both heat and cool. So, and your heating and cooling, you don't have, if you've got vapors or anything in your shop, the heating and cooling isn't, it happens outside the shop. So you don't have to worry about explosion or any of that with a mini split system.
Mini splits are typically a combination with both heating and air conditioning?
Yes, they're combination units. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to buzz through a little of this. Electric, natural gas, obviously. Radiant, which, again, if you can do it when you're designing the shop, it's a wonderful system. A radiant floor system would be great for a shop. Absolutely great. LPG, if you're out there in the middle of nowhere. Wood stove, we talk about a wood stove and they're a neat idea, but you got to be a little careful with the vapors around a wood stove. So heating, it's great, it's a good idea, but it's a little dicey, not sure. And safety, water sewer, okay, a sink is really nice to have. If you can do that in your shop, your wife or significant other will like you a lot better, because you won't be walking in and washing your dirty paws in the. If you have a bathroom, the older we get, the better idea that seems to be. Having the water avoids me washing my hands at the kitchen sink, which are nice. Other amenities, I'm just going to buzz through these. I'm sorry?
A television in your shop.
That's a man cave.
I absolutely, you know what? I love having a TV down there. And for two reasons. One, I can watch TV. And two, I bring a tablet down there and I'm watching something. I can cast it up onto the TV and sit there and look at that. Oh, okay, that's how you do it. Work on it, stop it, work on it a little bit more. I have a, 42-inch TV in there. So. I'd rather not say. Thank you. Really. I'm going to just buzz through these because I want to get to the
Goes faster.
yeah, see, it goes faster. The one I do want to point out, though, is can I work outside? And again, the more things you can... we live in an area where probably 8 months out of the year, it's pretty darn nice to work outside. Don't overlook that ability when you're planning your shop. Jim Templeton, again, I go back to that shop. How many toy parties did we have that were open to the outside and, a covered area? Wonderful place to work. And even as hot as it is now, if it's covered and you're outside, it's pretty pleasant out there. You can work. Yeah. And I also, moving things around the shop, you've got to be able to do that. And so figure out, where do I want to bring things into the shop? What do I want to do to those things when I bring them in? How can I efficiently move things around the shop? So everything, I'm a big proponent in everything, including your workbench, being on rollers. You can move stuff around, even just to redesign your shop, you can do that. So again, I think that's important to be able to do that. Layouts evolve, absolutely. You're going to change it. It changes because of what you're doing and the volume of stuff that you're doing. Both storage, can't have enough of it, can't have too much of it, let me put it that way. I've got a lot of storage in my shop. It's all closed in cabinetry. I should tell you all night now, my son-in-law and daughter were in a garage design business that in 2008 kind of went down under. And I have a ton of cabinet construction, melamine for cabinets. It's all pre-drilled. If anybody wants any of that, come get it. It's in my garage right now, and I'm trying to make room. It's melamine. It's designed for garage cabinetry. It would look like those kind of cabinets back there.
What's 3/4 inch?
3/4 inch.
Press board.
Yeah, it's press board with melamine on both sides.
Is it white or what's the finish?
I've got 3 different finishes. I've got a gray. I've got what's called a Congo, which is a little darker brown than that. And I have a maple, a light color. So there's different, and it's designed to be large cabinets. I mean, more like that full length cabinet there. They're 6 to 7 feet by about probably 25 inches.
Is it just the raw material?
Raw material. So if anybody wants any of that, come get it.
You got enough room for 20 pickups this afternoon?
Yes, I do. Nothing would make me happier. My heart would soar like an eagle. Let me tell you, you get your kids set up in business, and that was good, and it didn't work out, which that happens in the business, not a big deal. But the stupid thing is we paid to store this. I paid right at $200 a month, so to store this for 4 years. So there's 10 grand gone, and then I built the shop, and we decided, well, of course, one of the deals that I built the extra garage down there was, well, we can move all this stuff over there. So it's been there for 2 years. So, hello, think. You learn as you go. It would have been better off if I'd have put a match to it when I first closed the business, but anyway. Multiple duty, I'm going to cover this in one of the shops that we'll tour, and that is something that, again, depending on the size of your shop, you need to take advantage of all the square footage. And if you can get 2 tools in the same footprint as one, better for you, okay? Safety, I'm gonna buzz all this. Don't run too much electrical. Be sure, don't do like I did. Don't run it yourself. Get an electrician to come in and do it. For what you pay, then you can sleep at night. It's done right. Pathways clear of cords. Again, the older we get, the more tripping and things like that become an issue. So be careful. Don't leave a lot of stuff around. Try and get the dust at the machine. Can you start or stop a fire? And what I mean by that is, do you have a situation that's going to start a fire? And if you do you have a way to stop it? My cousin came in and said, "Where's your fire extinguisher?" Smart move, He's a fireman. And are you prepared to deal with a potentially catastrophic medical event? And so let me stop right here and have Ross come up and run through a quick safety demonstration. He's got something we probably all should have in our shops.
Pieces of information about a first aid kit and what you should use or what's recommended. I combined a couple things. One of the presenters, or one of the videos, was made by Mark Spag. Yeah, he's known as the Wood Whisperer, and I've patterned most of what I've got here for a first aid kit after what he recommends. What happens if you do a search on the internet for a first aid kit for a wood shop, you're probably not going to find one. There's a lot of first aid kits out there that have a lot of stuff you'll never use. So what I've done here is gone through, and this is the list of what will be in my first aid kit, or what is in it. I wanted to be able to print this so you could turn the paper around this way. I couldn't figure out how to do it, so you have to flip it. Okay, you did pretty good. So I'm following what Mark did, and a good neighbor, she and her husband, Elaine and Carl Wilson, live real close to us, a mile away. Yeah, Jerry Trujillo and I, we don't live in Timbuktu, we live in Timbuktu 3, out south of Belen, so we're way out there. Anyway, Elaine had worked many years for a doctor, and so she saw a lot of patients come in with all kinds of injuries. So I coerced her into meeting me at Walgreens, and we went through Mark's list, and she picked out and says, yeah, this is good, no, this isn't. So what I've done here is listed the items, and I'll go through them very quickly. There's several columns. How many units are in a box when you buy it, whatever the box is, and how many are going to be in my kit, how much was per box at the time I bought it. Now, of course, these prices will vary. Where did I get it from? When did I get it? And I tried to find a UPC number. Some of these items have about 17 different numbers on them, and I never know which one is the one that you're going to be referencing. So first thing you need is something to keep your first aid stuff in. Mark bought looks like a little kid's box, a little red lunch box. At the time I started researching this about 6 months ago, it was running about $22. They're now up to $40. And I said, I don't think so, Tim. Harbor Freight, 15 bucks. It's a 50 caliber ammunition, metal one. I will paint it eventually, I haven't got there yet. But it also seals, also sits flat. And I would recommend putting it someplace on a shelf where you can find it, get to it very quickly if you need it, because that's what this is for. And remember, this is first aid. I'm not going to take the time, because I'm not a doctor, to go through this and tell you how to use this stuff. This is just what's recommended to be put into your first aid kit. And again, this sort of follows Mark's video if you ever watch it. First thing he talks about is an antibiotic. Put on the owie or the wound or the open cut, whatever you've got. Old school, it used to be known as first aid cream. But antibiotic ointment, that's the first one. The next one he talks about is a quick clot sponge. I ordered this one off Amazon. I really didn't know where to find it. There's only one in here that's rather rigid. I hope this thing would work if I ever need it, that it's not dried out, because I've never used one of these things.
No, it's vacuum packed. Once you open it, it's...
Oh, okay. I've never, once you open it?
It's a sponge.
Oh, it is a sponge, okay. But it's kind of a vacuum seal. But if you need to stop the bleeding real quick, or cork up the leak you got in the body, that's supposed to help too. Next item are butterfly bandages. One of our woodworkers, Mike Sherrard, had several presentations. One of the comments he made was that woodworking by its very nature is hazardous, and it is. Also, if you take the guard off the saw, be prepared for the consequences. If you take your guard off the table saw, you're going to get stuff flying back at you. Scar on the forehead, butterfly bandages come in handy. Next item was the gauze pads. These are when you need them. Maybe you have a wound on the arm, a gauze pad comes in handy to help with that.
Boss?
Yes?
Make sure they're non-stick.
Oh, make sure they're non-stick. Because if they stick to the wound, that can kind of be not real pleasant to take off. Yeah. These are non-stick pads, again, from Walgreens. Just have to be handy in our neck of the woods. Next one, heavy-duty bandages. I got two styles or two different sizes. These are stretch. Of course, if you're like me, I get a wound of some kind. I don't want to quit working on my project. I want to keep going. So if I use a conventional Band-Aid that doesn't stretch, it's probably going to pull off of the cut or the injury. So two different sizes, and they're a stretch.
So you don't recommend duct tape or electrician's tape?
Duct tape or electrician's tape?
Works great. On top of the Band-Aid.
Yeah, on top of the Band-Aid might help. Who ended up with a Gorilla tape? Somebody did.
That's great stuff.
The next item, see, this was, here we go. Finger or knuckle bandages. Well, I couldn't find any of those, but I found what these are. These are called finger cots, C-O-T-S. They look like miniature Trojans. Yeah, like condoms, yeah, okay. But this, I won't go there. The disadvantage of these things, they don't let the injury breathe, but they will help protect it and keep it from getting dirty and so forth as you continue to work around in your shop. Next item was, gauze roll. This stretches. It says it's 2 inches by 2.2 yards, stretches to 2 inches by 5 yards. If you have a wound, for example, on the back of your arm, you can wrap this around and help hold the gauze in place. And Mark here recommends CA glue. There is a medical grade CA glue. You get about 2 ounces for $40. And I said, I don't think so. Yes, sir.
You can get the same thing. It's called Vet Bond for pets on Amazon for a little less than half that. Same formula.
Okay, so there's another source for you.
That is isobutyl like the stuff we buy is entirely different animal, even though it's cheaper. But it'll work too.
Okay. Do your own research and figure out what you want in your own first aid kit for some of this stuff.
You say that again, I didn't quite catch that.
Isobutyl is the medical one.
Okay, isobutyl. Don't ask me to spell that either. I'm not too good at that. But what I ended up with was New Skin. This came from, there it is. Walmart. This is Walmart. You kind of paint it on, so it's not too expensive. $4 for the small container versus the $40 for the medical aid CA glue I found online. I don't speak chemical that well, so I'm not too sure the advantages and disadvantages. This stuff has got to be better than what they used when I was a kid in grade school. Iodine and what was the other stuff? Mercurochrome. Boy, that hurt. Ethylated was another one. Okay. Flip the page over. Next thing, splinters. Good thing to use for those. Pair of tweezers. These are Tweezerman tweezers. Again, from Amazon. I never heard of them until I saw Mark's video. So about 6 months ago, I ordered a set. They are, as he says, very pointy. You can get cheap ones from Walmart and probably from Harbor Freight, But the tips actually come together, and being very pointed, you can dig out and get that sliver out. Makes it a lot easier. So I'd recommend those. They're very good. I think the manufacturers spend as much on materials for packaging as they did for the tweezers. But they are handy. I did not bring one, but a magnifying headset. Get these at Harbor Freight. They're just a band and they're plastic, but I've got a couple of those and I only use them infrequently, so they have lasted quite a while. Okay, the worst thing, one of the worst things you'll have is an amputation. Let's hope it never happens, but if it does, some of this stuff will help out with it. A single-handed tourniquet. I ordered a pair of these off Amazon. This is made in China. Please, when you order something like this, take out the packaging and read what it says and see what it says and see if you can figure out what it says. This is made in China, written in Chinese, translated by somebody that doesn't speak English very well, and it took me 3 or 4 times to figure out what is it telling me to do. Looks like it has a pencil in there, but that's an additional capability of making the tourniquet tighter, should you need one. What was the next one? Heavy-duty Ziploc baggies. I like the freezer-type baggies. They're heavy quality bags, and I got about 5 of them in here. And they can help in a variety of ways. Instant cold compress. This box came from Walgreens, and the 2 boxes that they had were kind of in the same shape. I don't know whether this thing is deciding to expand on its own inside the box or what's going on. But you break these and they become instantly cold. So the idea behind that, should you be separated from an appendage, you can use the Ziploc baggies, which are sealed to start with, break this open, and you can have a cold compress to put inside the baggie with the piece that you're missing. And I'll talk about one other thing you can do with that too. But as far as the eyes are concerned, I like this idea. This is an eye wash combination here. This has a little eye cup in it. It's not just eye drops. So if you really get something in your eye, you can help wash it out with this and with the cup. And medical grade gloves. These are kind of a purplish color. I guess that signifies that they're medical grade. I'm not sure about that.
Nitrate gloves.
Yeah, nitrile? I believe they were. Yes, nitrile exam gloves. That's what these are called. Next item, pair of scissors. Just happen to have a pair in the house. We weren't using them. Stuck it in the first aid kit for cutting off bandages or whatever. And a tube sock, preferably laundered. Take the tube sock and cut off the tube part. And if I have an injury on my arm, I can also use this to help protect it and keep it covered, and then I can continue to work. This is one of the ideas Elaine came up with. You can also use this, back to the amputation, put the digit inside and cover it up. Now it will not contact that cold compress directly, and that will keep it from freezing. That would work too. What else we got? Location map and address. When an emergency hops up, and we hope it doesn't happen, but it might, you might even forget what number to call for emergency, 911 or 19, what is it? Put several of these maybe on a clipboard or someplace near your first aid kit. I've got my address here, in case I can't remember that, or somebody else has to tell the emergency responders, where are you? Speaking of which, again, because Jerry and I are out in the middle of nowhere, don't trust GPS. There was an individual out in our neck of the woods a few years ago, had a heart attack. His wife called 911. Hour and a half later, the emergency, the EMS wasn't even there. Hour and a half. Turns out they're out in the middle of a field someplace because that's where the GPS said they're supposed to go. And that's where they went. Can't trust it. Phone numbers, home phone number, cell phone number. Your name, this is information they'll probably be asked for by the emergency responders. You know, who are you, what's happening, what's going on, where's the location of your emergency services. If you live in town, they'll probably come to your place. Send somebody outside to direct them where you are. In our particular instance, I haven't yet talked to the fire department, but I'm going to ask them what happens, especially if it's, well, I won't call it minor, but an amputation. Can I start bringing an individual in and I'll meet you guys coming down the highway? That might work, because trying to find some of our places is very difficult.
Is the DNR on the backside?
Yeah, right here. It's in the small fine print. That's underneath the map that shows people how to get to where I'm at. Yes, sir.
So do you think this information could be put on our website?
Yeah, I have no problem with putting that information on the website. I was going to put it in the newsletter, but yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. This is a recommendation. You know, build your own. Plus, the advantage of building your own first aid kit, you know what's in it.
It doesn't look like it'll all fit in that box.
It barely fits in this box.
Ask you if it fits.
Yeah, trust me, I used to work for the government. It'll fit in the box. One more thought, and Van talked about it right quick. For a fire extinguisher, you need an ABC, chemical fire extinguisher. A is usually for paper or sawdust or wood chips. B is for liquids. In our case, for woodworkers, it's going to be what? Lacquer thinner, mineral spirits, paint thinners, alcohol, and that kind of stuff. And the C is for energized electrical. If your table saw decides to burn up right away and sparks start flying out and you can't reach the plug to pull it out, you can use an ABC fire extinguisher to help put it out. One thing to keep in mind, if a fire does start, you have to decide what you're going to do. Normally, the procedure would be call 911, get the emergency services on the way. Then you decide if you're going to go fight it or not. Don't do it the other way around, because if you try to fight it and you fail, emergency services still don't know that you got a problem. One last thing, this some people call liquid ibuprofen. 6,000 milligrams. Says something about Jack Daniels on there, I'm not sure. No, that's not a good idea, don't do that. Those are my stories and I'm sticking to them. Okay. Oh, question, I'm sorry, Jim.
So one thing, we have talked to the fire department. We live out in these mountains, and so we've talked to them about location of fire extinguishers. And they recommended that the fire extinguishers be close to your exit. So that if you're at the exit when you're deciding whether to try and fight it or to leave.
Yep.
If you have to go deep into your shop to get the fire extinguisher, you're probably putting your life in danger.
You're toast.
And,
Sorry about that.
Place the fire extinguisher near an exit or the exit, so that, as Jim says, if you decide you're going to fight or flight, that's usually the terminology that's used, you've got the fire extinguisher right there on your way out. Don't, as Jim said, don't put it clear in the back in the cabinet someplace. Leave it out, let it hang on the wall. Matter of fact, good idea, put one in the kitchen too. They're not very attractive, and the size depends upon the area that you need to cover. Mine's about that big around, about that tall. Any other questions? Yes?
What is the shelf life on some of the products, and how often should you review what's in your box?
What was the first part of the question?
Shelf life.
Oh, shelf life. I'd have to read what's on the box. Something like this, the cold pack, I did not read it. It may have a shelf life.
So did Mark have a recommendation?
Oh, Mark did not have any recommendation on his video as to how often you should review it. I would think maybe once a year. If no other reason, just remember what you got in there. In my case, it's about every week. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I guess just a comment for maybe your index, your emergency card. Check what emergency rooms are in your network. Your network providers on there.
Okay, your network providers on your network. Just like
An out of network hospital visit would be very fun.
Yeah. That'd be good information. Network, look at your emergency or medical. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Can you open that ammo can with your non-dominant hand?
Can I open the ammo can with my non-dominant hand? Good question. That's a pretty tight fit with this thing. And okay, that's non-dominant. Probably not.
You mean you're a lefty?
That's right-handed. You're looking from the wrong angle. Yeah. Non-dominant hand, I'm going to say yes. I lie a lot. Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks, Ross.
Okay, we're going to try and jam an hour's worth of stuff into a half hour here, but we'll get there. So let's start out. I tried to do kind of small, medium, large. And I think the interesting thing with all of this is it's kind of the metamorphosis of woodworking here. And so, you know, some of us will never get past a single bay garage. That's fine if that's what, you know, works. But this is kind of, again, you can kind of see how things progress. So this is Rich LaHoke. He's got a third bay of a garage with an outside work area. It's about 300 square feet. I think that's about right, isn't it?
Closer to 200.
Okay, close. Well, the inside part.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 200 square feet. So, no, not a huge area. He's new to woodworking. I thought his shop was extremely well organized. I really did. So this is looking at going into the main garage door. That's not where I came in. I actually came in. Let's see if I can point there. Back here, he has a man access door right there. So but again, looking at the shop, so you can see it's long, narrow, and not a lot of wood, not a lot of room. First tool he built right there, his workbench. And he said to me, he said, well, you know, I really didn't know how to build a workbench, but he said, I just started, and I didn't have really a lot of tools to be able to machine wood and do all of that. And so he said, I just started kind of nailing boards together, and if I figured out I needed another shelf over here, I put the boards to do that, and it works. You know, it's a great workbench, rock solid, absolutely rock solid. Lots of nice lumber storage, and then you can notice down here, he's got the Gladiator shelving, so all the hooks and everything can be moved around. Great way to organize it. This is now looking back toward the outside door here. So here's his table saw. I think you said that was probably the second thing that you got?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think the important thing with the table saw is he's repurposed the one wing of the table saw. You can see that's a router table right there. So he's sharing workspace. There's a better shot of that. So he's got a router lift, and that's his part. And then you can also use the fence for the table saw as a fence for your router table. This is a separate. So now you've got the table saw on this back edge right here. Now you're looking the other way. This is the same height as the table saw, so he can use it as an outfeed table. He can also flip that over, and he's got tools down in here that he can access when he flips over. Again, right there, this tabletop flips over. So it flips 180 degrees, and you've got tools that are mounted to the bottom side of it. Okay? Neat idea. This was his latest acquisition. This is a beast here. 12-inch wide jointer and planer combination unit. So you're jointing on the top edge here. Underneath here is your planer. Uses the same head. Okay? Heck of a machine. You notice he has dust collection in there too. Better picture there. Yeah, it's a beast. It's a beast, no question. Little deal there. We noticed we said we wanted storage. So he's got that up on the top going across here, and then he's got his sink right there. This door right here is going into his house. Actually, no, it's going into the other part of the garage. Yeah. And then he goes into the house. So he's got a little buffer there. So this is actually, if you think about it, he's got a 2-car garage and then goes into the house. This is on the opposite side. So he's kind of done a neat thing with not having to worry about some of the noise and the problems that way. It's a little more insulated because you got the garage in between. I thought this was interesting because here he's got the cabinets, and you repurpose these. He actually built this in. He had the top and everything. Repurposed the cabinets. He's got everything. He likes drawer storage, and so everything is very accessible in those drawers. I thought that was a great idea. Another look at the cabinets, and then he's got his drill press here. Again, look at the clamps hanging up on the wall. You've got to find space for all of this stuff. You've got to find extra space.
As you get older, you'll find it beneficial to label what's in the drawer because you'll forget what you put in there. Right?
What?
Whatever's in the drawer.
What's in the drawer? What's in the drawer? Yeah.
What is the drawer?
What is the drawer? Yeah.
Make sure you use large print.
Yeah, large print labels. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Something from my experience, if you build your own drawers to hold things, I tend to accumulate a lot of stuff in some of the drawers, and I blew out 2 of the bottoms of the drawers because I put too much stuff in there.
Good point. Overbuild the drawer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used half-inch Baltic birch, and Neil Davies gave me the actual suggestion to pay a little extra to get full extension drawer slides, because it's amazing what stuff accumulates in the back.
Yeah. You want to be able to get to everything in those drawers, no question. This is interesting here. So this is on the side. This door here, actually this door right here, is that back door going into the garage. So what Rich has got here is an area that he's eventually going to build a cover over, and he'll be able to work outside. But his bandsaw is out here now. It's just, he puts that cover right on there and he can cover it up. And then he's got wood storage right here that again is covered. And again, we're in New Mexico. You don't really have to worry too much about, huge rains and things like that. It's gonna, you can use this outside area. There's the wood storage there. So again, what Rich told me was he's bought probably 90% of his wood from tool sales and other members, things like that. So he's got to have the wood storage in order to be able to grab it when it's available. Okay? You can get wood a lot less expensive if you can buy it in bulk and hold on to it for a little while. So that's what he's done. Rich?
The other point is it's stable, right? It's typically been dried out for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. So again, if you can do that and consciously make an area or a place where you can store lumber, you're going to be in a lot better place.
Watch out for black widows.
Yeah, well, they don't eat much. Okay, let's move on to the next size shop. Ben Blackwell is out in Corrales. It is a standalone shop, kind of. Ben shares this shop somewhat with his significant other, Joe, and I will say her area is much more organized than Ben's area. That's all I'm going to say. She does beautiful stained glass. If you see any of her stained glass, it's just, it's mind-boggling. But anyway, she's got a whole section that does nothing but the stained glass, and then he's got the section. This is a really nice, convenient workspace. I'll start off there. Now you'll notice here that he's got dust collection, central dust collection throughout the shop. I think his comment to me was he was spending his kid's inheritance so that he could have nice dust collection. Anyway, that's
an extra wide door?
4-foot door. It's a 4-foot door coming in. Yeah. Look at the natural light in this place. It's all the windows and everything. It's great. What a nice place to work. Even though I don't know, how big is the shop, Ben? Square footage?
Counting my office area, about 700 square feet.
Okay. All right. So it gives you an idea. But tall ceilings, lighting up and out of the way. It's well laid out. I'm going to buzz around the room here and just kind of show you a little bit about some of the different machines that he's got. So now we're looking at it. Here's that 4-foot door right here. And now he's coming in, bringing stuff into the shop. So right here, table saw and a chop saw. So again, you can whack things down to size pretty quickly, bringing them into the door. Now we're looking down, so your door is back over here. And now you're looking down the length of the shop there. Look at all the dust collection. It's all right there. And this stuff is neat. This is who makes it, Ben?
North
Norfab, okay. The neat thing about this is if you need to reconfigure, you just take the sections, or all of these collars, you can take all of these sections apart easily and reconfigure. So it's very flexible stuff. Not cheap, but it's very flexible. Might point out here, there's a few doll beds under construction right there, in case you were wondering. This is looking the other way. Now look at this, what was this an art? It was an artist's studio, correct?
Yes, it was designed by a painter.
Okay. So that's why it's got the natural light that it's got in it. And you've got this area in here with a desk. It's actually, it's not a desk area anymore. I think it was at one time, but it's not anymore. Ben's got another whole section for that. But again, look at it's well laid out. He's repurposed several of these things. I can't remember, what was that, Ben?
IBM card.
IBM, the old IBM cards.
Wow.
Great storage. Absolutely incredible storage there. Okay. There's a better picture of it. I thought I had one.
That's all open.
Yeah, he actually has labeled everything. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. I didn't check. But anyway.
Some of it is.
Some of it is. Okay, there we go. Sink, right there. So this is that little desk area that you saw. Again, look at the storage underneath. Lumber storage. This is kind of give you an idea of the height of these ceilings. And then also, he's put lumber storage up here where you don't need to get to it every day, but when you need it, it's up there.
How tall is your ceiling, Ben? 13 feet, and I would not build one that tall if I were building it from scratch. You need a 10-foot step ladder to reach the ceiling, and I don't want to be up on a 10-foot step ladder too much.
Now we're looking down toward from the back end of the shop to the front. And you know what? You can have one planer, or you can have two planers. So anyway, this is, again, I think, Ben, you inherited one of these and got one through a tool sale, and so.
The one on the right was from Tom Cooler's tool sale. So it wasn't terribly expensive, less than $200.
There's your central dust collector there. I actually have this same unit, and it's a great unit. The one thing that Ben's done that I have not done yet, and I'm going to do, is he's increased the size on his the main trunk lines and everything to 6 inches. I have 4 inches, and it makes a big difference. If you can run the main lines at 6 inches and then do your drops at 4 inches, you get a lot more efficient dust collection.
Yeah, how many CFM? Because mine doesn't have enough.
What is that? It's about 1,100, I think. I think it's about 1,100 CFM. Somewhere around.
Grizzly catalog.
Grizzly catalog has it. It's a good little unit.
That's horse and a half. That's Grizzly.
1.5 horse. Yeah.
It seems like it's 800, 900 CFM.
Something in that range. Yeah, John.
You have to be careful that you don't have any part of the runs that are too large for the number of CFM, or your chips won't move along.
They won't quite move, yeah. I mean, the theory behind the big dust collectors, the main dust collectors, the central dust collectors, is that you're not moving anything real fast. You're moving more material at a slower rate. It's not like a vacuum that moves a smaller amount of material at a lot higher rate. So you do have to keep things clear, or it will not. It'll get stuck. Yes.
I've not experienced the problem that John alluded to with that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the other nice thing about the Norfab stuff is that if you need to get into it to clear something, it can be done. If you've got PVC or something like that, getting into it is not easy. Yes, sir.
So this is great info on dust systems. I'm not familiar with them. So I guess each of the drop downs has an independent. Is that little red arm? Is that a shut off?
Yeah, it's called a blast gate. Right here.
Each run
And you can do a lot with these things. You can manually open them and close them. They make systems now that you can, depending on what machine is on, it will open the blast gate for that. It will keep the blast gate open for a period of time afterwards, close it. So it allows the system to clear all the chips out and then close. So there's a lot of things that can happen with dust collection now. Your pocketbook is probably the biggest determining factor. Yeah, Gail.
That ductwork, did you buy that locally?
I think Ben got that online.
You can get it from Granger or Grizzly.
Okay. It's called Norfab?
Norfab.
Nord, N-O-R-D, F-A-B.
Oh, I thought it was on the wall. Okay. Okay. So this area here goes out to again, full-length door. It's going out, so your other door is over on the opposite edge here, your other man door, the 4-footer. This goes out to a courtyard area, and you cross the courtyard and go to the house. So, and this is all, if you look out there, this is all covered here. So to get out here, it's all covered, walking out to the workshop area. So this is the office area that he's got, does all of his design work there. There's another area of it, so now you've moved to the other side of that. He's got 2 computers in there. Ben does a lot with SketchUp. He's the guru on SketchUp, so if you need any help on that, he's the one to talk to and is very good at doing that. Okay, now we're going to move up in grade here, and it's too bad Tracy couldn't be here. His wife was ill today, and they ended up down at the urgent care. So anyway, this is a standalone shop. I presented Tracy's shop years ago. It was in construction at the time and had a ways to go. I mean, you could see it had potential, but it had a ways to go. It's there pretty much now. It's a neat place. 1,600 square feet, high bay, 2 doors. I'll show you a little bit. It's pretty much what you want to end up with if you're looking at it. So now you can kind of see there's, let's see here. So little casita right here. This whole building was built as, it's in Corrales. So you know that the zoning and everything it's difficult to get anything built in Corrales. So Tracy had to jump through some hoops to get this done. But it matches, his house is over on this area side over here, and this matches it. It's a 2 or 3 bay garage. Let's see, I've got another picture. Nope, I don't. So, and like I say, high bay, it's air conditioned, it's heated, everything is first cabin on this.
So is that the garage door on the right, is that normal or is that short, like for lowrider?
No, this is this is normal height. This is higher. Yeah. Look at the windows in here, and you'll see when we go in there, these make a huge difference. It's really well done.
The garage is on the other side.
Yeah, he has another garage for the cars. Yeah, absolutely does. So this would probably be a 4 to 6 car garage if you were putting cars in there. Yeah. So this is kind of neat because every one of his machines, and we'll see more examples of this, are built onto are mounted onto bases that then have drawers and storage underneath. So he stores everything that he needs. I think I want to say that's a drill press there. I'll have to look at it a little further. And stores everything that's needed underneath it. So it's all of his work areas are like this. Air supply, I think we took a picture of this because of, again, all the pneumatic stuff is right there. Measuring, tape, all of it set up. I should point out too that all of the walls are 3/4 inch. I'm not sure it's birch, but it's a plywood. And the idea is that he can have a cleat system that runs all along here, French cleats, so he can move all of his cabinetry, any of that stuff, very easily. It just hangs on the wall. I'm going to buzz through a couple of these just to show you some of the different ones. Again, you can kind of see all the organizations. Even though it's a big shop, it's really well organized and fun to look at something like this.
Are you going to show his forklift?
Well, I'm going to show you what he uses, yes. Not the forklift, but it's similar. And he was saying all of this is toys in here that are ready to move out. So there's the high bay and the regular door right there. So it is 2 doors, but one of them's a double. So it's about the 3-car garage. But it's the depth of it and everything, you could easily put 6 cars in this thing if you wanted to. It's all insulated. You can see up here. He hasn't closed in the top, and I'm not sure he's going to. Look at the hose reels. There's air, electrical. All that's right there. Now, the important thing with this, look at the base. A pallet jack. He moves everything around with a pallet jack. So everything that he's got is on a raised pallet one way or another. And if he needs to move something, he just slides the pallet jack in, jacks it up, moves it away. Give you a little idea. The USS Enterprise, 18 inches wide. It's got to be at least 8 feet long.
Not on a pallet jack.
Not on a pallet jack. He doesn't move this one. I think this one weighs, I think it's close to 4,000 pounds. Again, 3-phase power. Absolutely incredible machine. You'll see here, this is a covered trench. So all of his dust collection and electrical is run in the trench. And then down through, and we'll show you where it goes to in a minute here. This one right here, I think I have another picture of that. There it is. Planer, thickness planer. That one I think weighs close to 5,000 pounds. Yeah. And it is on a pallet jack, so you can move it around. Yeah.
Does Tracy live in Albuquerque or?
Corrales. Right in the main, right off of Corrales Road. Beautiful, beautiful area. Look at the lumber storage. And he was complaining about that. He's going to rebuild that. He doesn't like it. Not enough. All right, so here's the trench. And that's going into another room that's behind here, and we'll show you that in a minute. That's where he's got his dust collection and his air compressor. This is actually the 3rd leg. This is the rotary. So this is where he converts from 220 single phase to 220 3-phase. That's what this little guy does here. So you can see it's coming down here and feeding. It's the planer and the jointer that are 3-phase machines.
Dan, are those solid state converters more efficient than the old motor type converters?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Are they more efficient? I don't know. They might be. I'm sure if Tracy was here, he could probably answer that question for us, because I'm sure he's researched that and knows. But that was something it took some doing to hook that up. This was the messiest area of the whole shop. I might point that out because it's not very messy. Yeah. Looking down the wall there, the back wall. Yeah, 2 things here. The pallet jack, so he can just move stuff around easily. This is something he's working on here. Well, actually, there's 2 things that he's working on. Hospital bed. Jerry Trujillo is the one that started us on the hospital bed idea. They're great. You can move things around. They roll easily. You can adjust the height of them easily. You can put a platform on top of them, or I guess you could sleep on it if you wanted to. Harbor Freight, I think, has one, but any medical supply place you can get them. But if you can find a used one, that would be the thing to do. And they are in the paper. If you watch, people sell them because they get them in their house. You know, somebody probably passed away, but, you know, they have a hospital bed. And they are really a neat deal because you can, if you want to use this as an outfeed table, it's perfect because you can literally raise it up to whatever height you need. Yeah, Jerry uses it to unload his pickup truck. So he gets a load of plywood or something, he puts it down to the same height as the pickup, loads the stuff on, you can lower it down as you load it. You're just sliding stuff out of the pickup. And then what do? Well, okay, now I roll it into the shop. I need to put it on another bench. I raise it up to the right height and do it. If you're working single in that garage, you need to figure out ways to, smart ways to move stuff around. The last thing I'm going to show you is this right here. All of this wood here, 4 years ago or 5 years ago when I did this and first looked at it, Tracy had been to a class up at Santa Fe Community College. He's taken a lot of the classes up there and had cut all of this material out as it's a standing desk, which is going to go in the finished part, the little casita part. And he said, well, I'm going to get that finished. And I pointed out to him when I was there this last time that that's still pretty much the same place where it was 5 years ago. So if you see Tracy, you got to ask him how he's coming with his standing desk there. Yeah, absolutely. This door right here is the door that goes into the casita. Again, got a wash sink in there, and the casita has a full bath with a shower. There we go. A lot of, he's got, gosh darn it, doing the wrong thing. Got a lot of rolling cabinets, again, storage. Everything he's got, he can move it. I mean, maybe with the exception of that one joiner. Pretty amazing. Okay, so this is the outside. So now we've gone outside the shop, come around, and this is the room that he has his dust collector, and that is a large dust collector right there. And you can see also he's got his air compressor here. And this unit here does two things. It apparently dries the air, and it also cycles the compressor so that as it fills and turns off, it drains the compressor out. So you don't get the water accumulation in the bottom of the compressor. It's an automatic system. This is inside the casita, so now you can see here the door going into the shop. Whoops. That's the last one right there. This was it's an incredible shop. If you get a chance to go to a toy party, he does have them down there. Go. See what he does. He's also done a lot. He's done several parties where he does the sawhorses, the Krenoff sawhorses. He's done the Krenoff sawhorses. And he's got a ton of those things around. And they're really handy. They stack together. You can pull them apart, use them for whatever you need. They're great sawhorses. Any questions? I know I buzzed through these last ones. I meant to spend more time on that. But anyway, thank you.